A humble 7-year-old girl pays for the coffee of a man who missed his meeting, not knowing he's a millionaire, and her real father. Just before the story starts, wherever you are on your journey, consider this your sign to keep going. The morning rain had finally stopped, leaving behind puddles that reflected the grey Manhattan sky. 7-year-old Emma Parker clutched her small pink umbrella in one hand and 3 crumpled dollar bills in the other, money she'd saved from doing extra chores at Mrs. Wilson's apartment downstairs. Today was special. Today, Emma could finally buy her mother that chocolate muffin she'd been eyeing at Baker's corner. Remember, straight to the bakery and back home, her mother, Beth, had instructed before leaving for her early morning shift at the diner. At 29, Beth Parker worked 2 jobs to keep their tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the less desirable part of town. Emma pushed open the heavy glass door of the cafe, the little bell announcing her arrival. The warmth and the smell of fresh coffee embraced her immediately. She stood in line, counting and recounting her money, making sure she had enough. That's when she noticed him, a tall man in an expensive suit, frantically patting his pockets, his face flushed with frustration. "I'm sorry, sir, but your card was declined," the barista said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The man checked his watch, 8:47 a.m., and muttered something under his breath. This can't be happening. Not today. Emma observed how his hands trembled slightly as he searched through his wallet again. She recognized that look of desperation. She'd seen it on her mother's face too many times. "I have a meeting at 9 that I can't miss," the man explained, his voice strained. "The most important meeting of my career, and my wallet must be in my other jacket." Without thinking twice, Emma stepped forward, stretching her small arm up to the counter. "I can pay for his coffee, please," she said, offering her $3 bills. The cafe fell silent. The man turned, noticing Emma for the first time. "You don't have to do that, sweetie," he said gently. "It's okay," Emma replied with a shrug. "My mom says helping others is more important than anything else." Something in the man's expression changed, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or just surprise at finding kindness in this unlikely source. He knelt down to Emma's level, and for a moment their eyes met. "That's very generous of you," he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. "What's your name?" "Emma Parker," she answered proudly. "I'm 7. The man's face paled slightly. "Parker," he repeated, as if testing the word. "And your mother?" "Beth Parker. She works at Miller's Diner and cleans offices at night." The barista interrupted, sliding the coffee across the counter. "Here's your Americano, Mr. Richardson." "Thank you," the man, Mr. Richardson said, not taking his eyes off Emma. "I'm James Richardson." Emma smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Richardson." James reached for his coffee with unsteady hands. "Emma, I want to pay you back. Would you like a muffin or something?" Emma's eyes brightened. "Actually, I was going to buy a chocolate muffin for my mom. She works so hard and chocolate makes her happy." James signaled to the barista. "1 chocolate muffin, please, and another Americano for later." He paid with the money Emma had given him, plus additional cash he found in his suit pocket. As they waited, James studied Emma's features. Her hazel eyes, the shape of her nose, the strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the same strawberry blonde hair that Catherine had. "Here you go," the barista said, handing Emma a bag with the muffin and giving James his change and extra coffee. "Thank you for saving my morning, Emma Parker," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're quite an extraordinary young lady." Emma beamed. "You're welcome. I hope your meeting goes well." As Emma skipped toward the door, James called after her. "Which diner did you say your mother works at?" "Miller's Diner on 23rd Street, Emma replied, waving goodbye. James watched her disappear around the corner, the pink umbrella bobbing along. He pulled out his phone and quickly dialed his assistant. Reschedule the Johnson meeting, he said firmly. Something more important just came up. In his pocket was the receipt from the cafe. He'd written on the back, Emma Parker, age 7. Mother, Beth Parker. Below that, a question mark and the date 7 years ago when Catherine had left him without explanation. James Richardson sat in his sleek black Bentley outside Miller's diner, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The Johnson meeting, a potential $50 million acquisition, hadn't even crossed his mind since he'd met Emma. The child with Catherine's eyes and his mother's smile. "Are you sure you want to do this, sir?" asked Martin, his driver and longtime confidant, eyeing him through the rear-view mirror. "I have to know, Martin." James loosened his tie. 7 years ago, Catherine disappeared without explanation. Now there's a 7-year-old girl with my last name who looks just like her. Just be careful, sir, if she is yours. Martin let the implications hang in the air. James nodded. "I know." The diner was busy with the lunch crowd when James entered, scanning the waitresses until he spotted her, Beth Parker, according to her name tag. She was slender, with dark hair pulled back into a practical ponytail, moving efficiently between tables. James chose a booth with a clear view of her section and waited. When Beth approached with her order pad, there was no hint of recognition in her eyes. "Welcome to Miller's. What can I get you today?" Her voice was pleasant, but tired. "Just coffee for now." James studied her face. "You're Beth Parker." Her smile faltered slightly. "Yes. Have we met before?" "No," James said carefully. "But I met your daughter this morning. Emma, remarkable child." Beth's professional demeanor instantly transformed into maternal alertness. "You met Emma? How?" "At Baker's Corner. She paid for my coffee when my card was declined." He smiled, trying to appear non-threatening. "It was an extraordinary act of kindness." Beth relaxed slightly. "That sounds like Emma, always giving away what little she has." Pride softened her expression. "I'll get your coffee." When she returned, James asked, "Has Emma always been so generous, since she could walk?" Beth placed his coffee down. "Was there anything else?" Actually, James set his business card on the table. Richardson Enterprises, CEO. "I'd like to repay her kindness, perhaps a college fund contribution." Beth stared at the card, her face paling. "You're James Richardson. You know who I am?" Beth's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the card. "Everyone in New York knows Richardson Enterprises." She hesitated. "Thank you for the offer, but we don't need charity." "It's not charity," James insisted. "It's repayment for kindness. Plus, I missed an important meeting because I was so touched by what she did." Beth studied him with newfound wariness. "Why would a man like you care so much about a random child's gesture?" James met her gaze steadily. "Because kindness like that is rare, especially in this city." Before Beth could respond, another waitress called her name. "I need to get back to work," she said, sliding his card back. "Thank you for the thought, Mr. Richardson." As Beth walked away, James noticed a small photograph tucked into her order pad. Emma as a toddler, beaming at the camera. Something inside him ached at the sight. He left a $100 tip under his coffee cup and departed, more determined than ever to uncover the truth. Back in his office, James paced before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "I need everything you can find on Beth Parker and her daughter Emma," he told his private investigator over the phone. "School records, birth certificate, previous addresses, everything." "Any particular reason?" the investigator asked. James paused, watching a cloud pass over the city. "I believe she might be my daughter." Emma balanced carefully on the wooden stool in their small kitchen, stirring the macaroni and cheese while Beth folded laundry nearby. Their apartment was modest, a one-bedroom with Emma sleeping in the bedroom and Beth on the pull-out couch, but it was clean and filled with evidence of their close bond. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator, and mismatched mugs from their weekend thrift store adventures lined the open shelving. "Mom, I met a man in a fancy suit today," Emma said, tongue poking out in concentration as she stirred. Beth's hands stilled on the towel she was folding. "Mr. Richardson, the one from the cafe?" Emma nodded. "He seemed sad until I helped him. Then he bought you a muffin." She pointed to the paper bag on the counter. "Chocolate, your favorite." Beth crossed the kitchen and hugged her daughter from behind. "You're too good for this world, Emmy Bean." "He asked where you worked," Emma continued innocently. "Did he come to see you?" Beth stiffened. "He did, actually." "Was he nice?" Beth resumed folding, her movements more deliberate. "He was. Polite." She changed the subject. "How was school today?" Later that night, after tucking Emma in, Beth retrieved a worn shoebox from the highest shelf in her closet. Inside were fragments of a life she'd left behind, a few photographs, letters, and a newspaper clipping about Catherine and James Richardson, Manhattan's golden couple. Beth's fingers trembled as she touched the old hospital bracelet with her real name, Elizabeth Walker. Next to it lay a sealed envelope addressed to Emma, to be opened on her 18th birthday. The whole truth about why they had fled, why they had changed their names, and why she had raised Catherine's daughter as her own. "I promised to keep her safe," Beth whispered to the empty room, tears welling in her eyes as she remembered her best friend's final request. The following morning, Beth dropped Emma at school and headed to her second job cleaning offices. As she entered the Richardson Enterprises building as part of the cleaning crew, her heart raced. For 7 years, she had avoided any connection to the Richardson name, and now here she was, vacuuming the very floors of his empire. "New assignment today," her supervisor announced. "Executive floor needs special attention for a meeting." Beth's stomach dropped. "Executive floor? Isn't that usually Maria's area?" "She's out sick. You're up." As Beth pushed her cart into the elevator, memories flooded back. Catherine's desperate phone call, the hospital, the baby, the promise, the escape. The newspaper headlines that followed. "Tech mogul's wife vanishes. Richardson offers reward for information." And then the elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area with Richardson Enterprises emblazoned on the wall in chrome letters. Beth kept her head down, focusing on her task, praying she wouldn't encounter James himself. Her prayers went unanswered when a familiar voice called out, "Beth!" She turned slowly to find James Richardson standing in the doorway of his office, shock evident on his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, approaching her. "I work for Metropolitan Cleaning Services," she answered, gesturing to her uniform. "Just doing my job." James studied her with intensity. "Quite a coincidence." "The city's smaller than it seems," Beth replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. James stepped closer. "I've been thinking about Emma since yesterday. The timing, her age." He paused. "Beth, I need to ask you something directly. Is Emma related to Catherine Richardson?" The vacuum cleaner dropped from Beth's hand with a loud clatter. "I don't know what you're talking about," Beth said, retrieving the vacuum cleaner with shaking hands. "I think you do." James's voice was gentle but firm. "Emma is 7. Catherine disappeared 7 years ago. The resemblance is unmistakable." Beth straightened, meeting his gaze with newfound resolve. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate your interest in my daughter, but your assumptions are misplaced. Emma is my child. I have the birth certificate to prove it." "Birth certificates can be falsified," James countered, his eyes never leaving hers. "I need to finish my work." Beth turned away, but James caught her arm. "Please," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "If you know anything about what happened to Catherine, I'm going to lose my job if I don't complete this floor." Beth interrupted, pulling away. James released her and stepped back. "I'll find the truth, Beth. One way or another." As Beth hurried to the elevator, her mind raced. They needed to leave. Tonight. Start over again, somewhere new. She had promised Catherine she would keep Emma safe, especially from him. Across town, in a well-appointed office, private investigator Daniel Reeves sifted through the information he'd gathered on Beth Parker. Birth records showed a Beth Parker born in Ohio who died as an infant, a common tactic for assuming a false identity. School records for Emma indicated enrollment only 3 years ago, with no prior history. Bingo, Daniel murmured as he discovered a hospital record from 7 years earlier. A baby girl born to Catherine Richardson, with a nurse named Elizabeth Walker listed as present during delivery. The same Elizabeth Walker who had vanished the same day as the infant and Catherine Richardson. Daniel picked up his phone. "Mr. Richardson? I think I found something." Meanwhile, Beth picked Emma up early from school, her heart pounding. "We're taking a little trip," she explained, trying to keep her voice light. "But what about school?" "And your jobs?" Emma asked, confused by her mother's unusual behavior. "It's an adventure," Beth insisted, throwing clothes into a suitcase. "Like we've talked about, remember? Sometimes we need to be ready to go quickly." Emma nodded solemnly. They had practiced this game before, how to pack essential items in under 5 minutes, where to meet if they got separated, the importance of their emergency cash stash. Beth had always framed it as preparing for natural disasters, but it had always been for this moment. As Beth zipped the suitcase, a knock at the door froze her in place. Through the peephole, she saw James Richardson standing in the hallway. "Beth! I know you're in there," he called. "Please just talk to me." "Mom," Emma whispered, sensing her mother's fear. "Is that the man from the cafe?" Beth pressed a finger to her lips, gesturing for Emma to be quiet. They waited, barely breathing, until James knocked again. "I know about Elizabeth Walker," he said through the door. "I know you were there when Emma was born. I just want to understand what happened to Catherine." Beth closed her eyes, memories washing over her. Catherine's bruised arms, the whispered confessions during night shifts at the hospital where they'd worked together, the fear in her friend's eyes when she discovered she was pregnant. "He can't know about the baby," Catherine had said. "He'll never let me leave if he knows." Another knock, more insistent. "There's more at stake than you realize," James called. "Things about Catherine you don't know." Beth's hand hovered over the doorknob. 7 years of running, of looking over her shoulder, of building a life from nothing. Could she keep running forever? "Mom?" Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Why are we hiding from the nice man?" In that moment, Beth made her decision. She opened the door a crack, chains still in place. "You have 5 minutes," she told James. "In the cafe across the street. Emma stays with Mrs. Wilson downstairs." James nodded, relief evident in his features. "Thank you." As Beth arranged for Emma to stay with their neighbor, she wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or finally facing a truth that couldn't stay buried any longer. The cafe was nearly empty when Beth slid into the booth across from James. Neither spoke for a moment. The weight of 7 years of secrets hanging between them. "Elizabeth Walker," James finally said. "That's your real name." Beth nodded slightly. "I haven't used that name in a long time." "You were a nurse at Mount Sinai. You worked with Catherine." James pushed a folder across the table. "You disappeared the same day she did, with her baby." Beth left the folder untouched. "What do you want from me, James?" "The truth," his voice cracked with emotion. "What happened to my wife? Why did she leave? And is Emma?" He couldn't finish the question. Beth wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, drawing strength from its warmth. "Before I tell you anything, I need to know something first." "Did you hurt her?" James recoiled as if slapped. "Hurt Catherine? Never. I loved her more than anything." "Then why was she so afraid of you?" Beth challenged. "Why did she make me promise to keep Emma away from you at all costs?" Confusion washed over James's face. Afraid? Catherine wasn't afraid of me. We were happy, planning for a family. Our future. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. There were no signs. One day everything was normal. The next, she was gone. Beth studied him intently, searching for deception. She told me you were controlling. That when she tried to leave once before, you threatened her. That's not true, James insisted. She never tried to leave. We argued sometimes, like any couple, but I never threatened her. He leaned forward. Beth, someone is lying. Either Catherine lied to you, or you're lying to me now. The certainty in his eyes made Beth uneasy. She had built her entire understanding of James Richardson on Catherine's terrified accounts. What if there was more to the story? The night before she disappeared, James continued, we had dinner at home. We talked about names for the baby we hoped to have someday. She seemed happy, Beth. The next morning, she said she was going shopping. She kissed me goodbye. His voice broke. I never saw her again. That doesn't make sense, Beth said, shaking her head. She called me panicking, saying she needed to get away from you. When I got to her, she was in labor. She made me swear I would take her baby somewhere safe, somewhere you couldn't find her. James stared at Beth, processing this revelation. Catherine was pregnant when she left me. And you've been raising our child? Beth hesitated, then nodded. Emma is Catherine's daughter. And mine, James added, his voice a mix of wonder and pain. Biologically, yes, Beth conceded. But I'm the only mother she's ever known. James closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the confirmation of what he had suspected since seeing Emma in the cafe. When he opened them again, there was a new determination in his gaze. There's something you don't know about Catherine, he said quietly. Something that might explain her behavior. Beth tensed. What? Catherine was diagnosed with a psychiatric condition shortly before we met. She managed it well with medication, but sometimes... He hesitated. Sometimes she would become paranoid, convinced people were plotting against her. Beth shook her head vehemently. No, she wasn't paranoid. She showed me bruises. Bruises? James looked genuinely shocked. I never laid a hand on her, never. Then how do you explain... I can't, James interrupted. But I can show you these. He pulled out his phone and showed Beth a series of text messages from the days before Catherine's disappearance. Messages to someone named Marcus, arranging meetings, expressing affection. Beth stared at the messages in disbelief. She was having an affair. I found these after she vanished. I hired investigators thinking she'd run off with this man, but they never found any Marcus in her life. James put the phone away. What if the bruises, the fear, what if it was all connected to him, not me? Beth felt the ground shifting beneath her. For 7 years, she had believed she was protecting Emma from a monster. What if she'd been wrong? As Beth struggled with this possibility, the cafe door opened and Emma burst in, followed by a flustered Mrs. Wilson. "Mom!" Emma called out, rushing to their table. "I told Mrs. Wilson I needed to use the bathroom, but I really wanted to see you and Mr. Richardson again." Beth and James froze as Emma climbed onto the bench beside James, smiling up at him with innocent curiosity. "Did you know," Emma said to James, "that you have the same color eyes as me? Mom says I got my eyes from an angel." The revelation of Emma's sudden appearance left both adults momentarily speechless. Mrs. Wilson apologized profusely as she approached their table. "I'm so sorry, Beth. She said she needed the restroom, and before I knew it, she darted across the street." "It's all right, Clara," Beth assured her, though her eyes never left Emma, who was now chattering animatedly to James about her school art project. "I'll take her back with me," Mrs. Wilson offered, reaching for Emma's hand. "Actually," James interjected, looking to Beth for permission, "perhaps Emma could stay? We were just getting to know each other better." Beth hesitated. torn between her instinct to protect Emma and the dawning realization that she might have been wrong about James. "It's okay, Clara. Thank you for watching her." After Mrs. Wilson left, Emma looked between the two adults curiously. "Were you talking about me? You both look serious." Beth reached across the table and took Emma's small hand in hers. "Emma, remember how I told you that families come in all different shapes and sizes?" Emma nodded, her expression solemn. "Like Zoe at school, who has 2 moms, and Tyler, who lives with his grandma." "That's right," Beth continued, her voice gentle. "And sometimes a child can have more than one set of parents who care about them." Emma's brow furrowed. "Like in adoption?" "Something like that," Beth confirmed, her heart racing. She glanced at James, who was watching the exchange with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Emma," James said carefully, "I knew your mother, your birth mother, a long time ago." "You knew my angel mom?" Emma's eyes widened. "The one who had to go to heaven." James looked questioningly at Beth, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and she was very special to me." "Is that why you were sad at the cafe? Because you missed her?" Emma asked, with the innocent directness only a child could manage. James swallowed hard. "Yes, that's part of it." Beth watched their interaction with a growing sense of uncertainty. James showed none of the controlling, dangerous behavior Catherine had described. Instead, he was gentle, patient, and clearly moved by his daughter's presence. "There's something I need to show both of you," Beth said suddenly, making a decision. "Back at our apartment." 20 minutes later, they gathered in the small living room as Beth retrieved the shoebox from her closet. She removed the sealed envelope addressed to Emma. "Catherine, your birth mother, gave me this before she died," Beth explained, her voice trembling slightly. "She asked me to give it to Emma when she turned 18. But I think we need to read it now." "Catherine died?" James asked, shock evident in his voice. "How? When?" "Complications after childbirth," Beth said quietly. "She hemorrhaged. The doctors couldn't stop it." She handed the envelope to James. "She wrote this in her final hours." With shaking hands, James opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means I didn't survive to raise you myself, and Beth has kept her promise to be the mother I couldn't be. I need you to understand why I made the choices I did. The man listed on your birth certificate, Marcus Delaney, is not your biological father. Your true father is James Richardson, a man I loved deeply but came to fear. At least I thought it was fear. Now, as I feel my life slipping away, I'm no longer certain. The truth is, Emma, my mind hasn't been reliable. The doctors called it delusional disorder. Sometimes I believe things that weren't real, saw threats where none existed. James tried to help me, but I resisted, convinced he was the enemy when he was only trying to save me from myself. I stopped taking my medication when I learned I was pregnant, terrified it would harm you. Without it, the delusions returned. I became convinced James would take you away, that he was plotting against us. I created evidence, self-inflicted bruises I blamed on him, recordings I edited to twist his words. Beth doesn't know this. She believed she was rescuing us. If James finds you someday, please give him a chance. He deserved better than my betrayal. With eternal love, your mother. Catherine." The letter dropped from James's hands as he looked up at Beth, whose face had drained of all color. "She lied to me," Beth whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All this time, I thought I was protecting Emma from you when—" "You were doing exactly what a mother should," James finished for her, "protecting her child at all costs." Emma, who'd been listening quietly, slipped her hand into James's. "Does this mean you're my real dad?" Before he could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. Beth wiped her tears and went to answer it, finding a stern-faced woman in a business suit standing in the hallway. "Elizabeth Walker?" the woman asked. "I'm Andrea Morrow with Child Protective Services. We've received information that you've been raising a child under a false identity. I'm here to discuss Emma Richardson's custody situation." Behind her stood Daniel Reeves, the private investigator, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I'm sorry," he said to James over the woman's shoulder. "But once I found the birth certificate with Catherine's name and discovered the false identity, I was legally obligated to report it." James stood up, positioning himself between the door and Emma. "There's been a misunderstanding," he began, but the damage was already done. Beth turned to him, her eyes wide with betrayal. "You did this? You called them?" "No," James insisted. "I would never—" "Ms. Walker," the CPS worker interrupted, "I need to speak with Emma alone, and then we'll need to discuss temporary placement while this situation is investigated." Beth's world collapsed around her as she realized that despite Catherine's deceptions, her greatest fear was coming true. She was about to lose Emma. Emma clung to Beth's leg, her small body trembling as the CPS worker, Ms. Morrow, explained the situation in clinical terms. "This is standard procedure when we discover potential identity fraud involving a minor," she said, flipping through her paperwork. "Emma will need to stay in temporary care while we investigate." "She's not going anywhere," Beth said firmly, her arm protectively around Emma's shoulders. "This is her home. I'm the only mother she's known for 7 years. James stepped forward, his expression resolute. "Ms. Morrow, I'm James Richardson. I'm Emma's biological father. And I've only just learned of her existence today." He handed her his business card. "I understand protocol must be followed, but removing Emma from the only home she's known would be traumatic and unnecessary." Ms. Morrow looked between them, skepticism evident. "Mr. Richardson, the tech entrepreneur?" Her eyes narrowed. "This complicates matters further. If you're claiming paternity, we'll need DNA verification." "Of course," James agreed immediately. "But in the meantime, surely Emma can remain with Beth." "I have no objection. In fact, I insist upon it." The investigator, Daniel Reeves, shifted uncomfortably by the door. "I should clarify something," he interjected. "I didn't file the CPS report. I simply located the birth records showing Catherine Richardson as the mother. Someone else must have reported this situation." Ms. Morrow consulted her notes. "The report was filed anonymously this morning, claiming a child was being raised under false pretenses by someone using a stolen identity." Beth and James exchanged worried glances. Who else knew about their situation? "Please," Beth implored, her voice breaking. "She has school tomorrow, friends, a routine. Don't take her away from everything familiar." Ms. Morrow's professional demeanor softened slightly as she observed Emma's frightened expression. "Here's what we can do. Given Mr. Richardson's willingness to cooperate and his acknowledgement of your role in Emma's life, I can authorize a temporary joint custody arrangement pending investigation. Emma stays here, but Mr. Richardson will need supervised visitation rights, and I'll need to conduct weekly home visits." Relief washed over Beth's face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ms. Morrow warned. "This is temporary. There will be court hearings, DNA tests, background checks. And Ms. Walker, or Parker, you'll need to answer for the identity fraud." After signing preliminary paperwork and scheduling follow-up appointments, Ms. Morrow and Daniel finally left. The moment the door closed, Beth collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with suppressed sobs. "I'm so sorry," James said, sitting beside her but maintaining a respectful distance. "I swear I had nothing to do with that report." Beth nodded, believing him despite everything. "If not you, then who? Who else would care about our situation?" "I don't know," James admitted. "But I intend to find out." Emma crawled into Beth's lap, her small face serious. "Are they going to take me away from you, Mom?" "No, sweetheart," Beth assured her, though her eyes met James's with uncertainty. "We're going to figure this out together." James knelt before them, choosing his words carefully. "Emma, there are going to be some changes, but Beth will always be your mum. And if you're willing, I'd like the chance to be part of your life too." Emma studied him thoughtfully. "As my dad?" "Yes," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "As your dad." Emma looked between them, processing this new reality with remarkable composure for a 7-year-old. "So I'll have a mum and a dad now. Like regular kids?" Beth managed a watery smile. "Yes, like regular kids." Later that night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Beth and James sat at the small kitchen table, cups of cold coffee between them. "We need a plan," James said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "The identity fraud charges could be serious." "I did what I had to do to protect her," Beth said defensively. "I know," James assured her, "and I'm grateful. But now we need to protect you, too." He hesitated. "I have resources, lawyers, connections. Let me help." Beth studied him, still reconciling the monster Catherine had described with the man before her. "Why would you help me? I kept your daughter from you for 7 years. "Because you loved her enough to upend your entire life for her," James replied simply. "And because Emma needs you." Beth nodded slowly, accepting his offer. As James prepared to leave, promising to return the next day with his legal team, Beth had one more question. "What happens when this is all settled? What kind of arrangement do you want with Emma?" James paused at the door. "I've missed 7 years of her life. I want to be her father in every sense of the word." He met Beth's gaze directly. "But I would never separate her from you. We'll find a way to make this work, for Emma's sake." As the door closed behind him, Beth sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the day's revelations. Outside, a figure watched from a parked car as James left the building, making a note of the time before driving away. The Richardson Enterprises conference room felt impossibly large to Beth as she sat beside James, facing his team of high-powered attorneys. 2 weeks had passed since the CPS visit, and their temporary arrangement had held. Emma remained with Beth, while James visited daily, gradually building a relationship with his daughter. "The good news," said Vivian Chen, James's lead attorney, "is that we've confirmed paternity through DNA testing. As Emma's biological father with no history of abuse or neglect, Mr. Richardson has a strong claim to custody." Beth's heart sank, though she'd been expecting this. "However," Vivian continued, "the courts generally favor stability for the child. Ms. Walker." "Parker," Beth corrected reflexively. After years of using the name, it felt more real than her birth name. "Ms. Parker," Vivian amended, "has been Emma's primary caregiver for 7 years. No judge would completely sever that relationship." "I don't want to sever anything," James interjected firmly. "I've made that clear from the beginning." Another attorney, a silver-haired man named Edward, cleared his throat. "The identity fraud charges are more problematic. Using a deceased infant's identity to create false documentation carries potential felony charges." Beth paled. "I could go to prison." "Worst-case scenario, yes," Edward confirmed. "But we have mitigating circumstances. Your care for Emma, the circumstances under which you assumed custody, Catherine's letter." "What are you suggesting?" James asked. "A unified front," Vivian explained. "We present this as a unique situation where 2 people are committed to one child's well-being. We emphasize that Ms. Parker acted out of compassion, not criminal intent." "And the anonymous tip to CPS?" Beth asked. "Have you discovered who made it?" The attorneys exchanged glances. "Not yet," Edward admitted, "but we're working on it." Outside the conference room, Emma sat with James's assistant, Miranda, who had brought coloring books and snacks to keep her occupied during the meeting. Through the glass walls, Beth could see Emma chatting animatedly, apparently unfazed by the adults' serious discussions about her future. "There's one more option," Vivian said carefully, "one that would resolve many of these issues simultaneously." "What is it?" James asked. "Marriage," Vivian stated simply. "If you two were to marry, it would give both of you legal rights to Emma, resolve the identity issues under family unification provisions, and present a stable home environment to the court." The suggestion landed like a bomb in the room. Beth stared at Vivian in disbelief, while James looked equally stunned. "That's absurd," Beth said finally. "We barely know each other." "It would be a legal arrangement," Vivian clarified. "Strictly for Emma's benefit. You could maintain separate residences if desired, though that would somewhat undermine the stability argument." "There has to be another way," James insisted, though he looked less opposed than Beth had expected. As the meeting concluded, with promises to explore all options, Beth and James collected Emma and walked toward the elevator in uncomfortable silence. "Ice cream?" Emma suggested, looking between them hopefully, oblivious to the tension. James smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Excellent idea." At the ice cream parlor, they sat at a small table while Emma happily devoured a chocolate sundae. Beth watched James interact with Emma, his genuine delight in her stories, his patience with her endless questions, his obvious love for this child he'd only just discovered. "She has Catherine's laugh," James observed quietly. Beth nodded. "And your determination. Once she sets her mind to something, there's no changing it." "Like insisting on paying for a stranger's coffee?" James smiled. "Exactly like that." Beth hesitated. "James, about what Vivian suggested." "It's just one option," he assured her quickly. "An extreme one." "Is it, though?" Beth mused, surprising herself with the question. "If our priority is Emma's well-being and stability." James studied her carefully. "Beth, are you actually considering this?" Before she could answer, Emma interrupted. "Mom? Dad, look!" She pointed to the television mounted in the corner of the ice cream shop, where a news segment showed Catherine's father, Senator William Hartford, announcing his candidacy for president. "And as I begin this campaign," the distinguished older man was saying, "I do so with the memory of my beloved daughter Catherine, whose tragic disappearance 7 years ago remains unsolved. I vow to strengthen protections for families across America." James's expression darkened. "William never approved of me. He blamed me when Catherine vanished, insisted I must have done something to her." He turned to Beth. "Did Catherine ever mention problems with her father?" Beth shook her head. She rarely spoke about her family, except to say they had high expectations. As they watched, the camera panned to show a man standing behind Senator Hartford, a stern-faced individual with cold eyes. "That's Marcus Delaney," James said, his voice tight. "Catherine's former security chief and the man she named as Emma's father on the birth certificate." Beth stared at the screen in shock. "He works for her father." "Apparently." James pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. "And according to my sources, he's been working for the senator since before Catherine and I even met." His eyes met Beth's, a new understanding dawning. What if Catherine's paranoia wasn't entirely unfounded? What if someone was manipulating her? As they left the ice cream shop, neither noticed the black sedan that pulled away from the curb to follow them, or the camera lens that captured their every move. The playground buzzed with the sound of children's laughter as Beth sat on a bench watching Emma and James build an elaborate sandcastle. 3 months had passed since their lives had collided, and an uneasy routine had developed. James visited daily, sometimes taking Emma to his penthouse for dinner, while Beth adjusted to sharing the parenting role she'd handled alone for so long. "They look happy together," observed Miranda, James's assistant, who had become a friend to Beth during this strange transition. "They do," Beth agreed. feeling the familiar mixture of joy and apprehension that accompanied these moments. She adores him, and he's completely besotted with her, Miranda added. I've never seen him like this. He rearranges billion-dollar meetings to make her school plays. Beth smiled despite herself. Whatever her complicated feelings about James, she couldn't deny he was a devoted father. The court hearing is next week, she said, changing the subject. The final custody determination. Miranda squeezed her hand sympathetically. James won't let you lose her. It's not just about custody anymore, Beth confessed. The identity fraud charges are still pending. My lawyer says they're pushing for prosecution. Who's pushing? The DA? Someone with influence is pressuring them, Beth confirmed. James thinks it might be Senator Hartford. Miranda looked surprised. Catherine's father? Why would he care about you? Because of Emma, Beth said quietly. His granddaughter, a Hartford by blood. Even if she doesn't know it. Across the playground, James was helping Emma add flags to the towers of their sandcastle, their heads bent together in concentration, the resemblance between them unmistakable. Have you and James discussed Vivian's suggestion? Miranda asked carefully. Beth felt her cheeks warm. The marriage option? We've mentioned it a few times. It's the simplest solution legally, but it's not simple emotionally, Miranda finished for her. Exactly. Beth watched as James caught Emma at the bottom of the slide, spinning her around while she squealed with delight. I'm not sure I even know who he really is. 1 minute. He's the ruthless CEO making multi-million-dollar deals, and the next, he's on his knees playing tea party with Emma. Maybe both versions are real, Miranda suggested. People contain multitudes, especially complicated ones like James. Their conversation was interrupted when James and Emma approached, flushed with excitement. Mom! Dad's taking us to the museum with the dinosaurs tomorrow, Emma announced. Beth raised an eyebrow at James. Oh, is he? James had the grace to look sheepish. I should have checked with you first. Yes, you should have, Beth agreed, though without real anger. These boundary negotiations were ongoing, a delicate dance as they learned to co-parent. Please, Mom, Emma pleaded. Dad says they have a new T-Rex exhibit. Beth relented, as they all knew she would. All right, but homework first. As Emma skipped ahead toward the park exit, James fell into step beside Beth. I've been meaning to talk to you about something, he said in a lowered voice. My investigator found some disturbing information about Marcus Delaney. What kind of information? He was more than just Catherine's security chief. He was monitoring her, reporting her activities, her conversations, her medical appointments back to her father. James's expression was grim, and he was with her the day before she disappeared. Beth stopped walking. You think he had something to do with her death? I don't know, James admitted. But I find it suspicious that the man she falsely named as Emma's father now works directly for the senator who's running for president. A campaign that's partially built on sympathy for his missing daughter. But Catherine died of complications after childbirth, Beth reminded him. I was there. Were you with her the entire time? James asked. From the moment she called you until she died. Beth thought back to that chaotic night. No, there were periods when the medical team asked me to step out. And after Emma was born, I was focused on the baby while they worked on Catherine. James nodded as if confirming a suspicion. We need to get Catherine's complete medical records. Something doesn't add up. As they reached the park exit, a tall figure stepped into their path. Marcus Delaney himself, immaculately dressed in a suit despite the casual park setting. Mr. Richardson, he said smoothly. Ms. Walker, or is it Parker? So many names, it's hard to keep track. James instinctively moved closer to Emma and Beth. What do you want, Delaney? Just a friendly conversation. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Senator Hartford is very interested in meeting his granddaughter. Emma is my daughter, James stated firmly, and Beth's. Biologically, she's a Hartford, Marcus countered. The senator has rights. He has no legal standing, James retorted, and if he wants to meet Emma, he can reach out directly, not send his errand boy to intimidate us at a playground. Marcus's facade of pleasantry slipped momentarily. The senator is prepared to be generous, financially and otherwise. He's also prepared to ensure certain fraud charges disappear. His gaze shifted meaningfully to Beth. Are you threatening us? Beth asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Offering solutions, Marcus corrected. The senator simply wants a relationship with Catherine's child. Think about it. He handed James a business card. The offer expires after the court hearing. As Marcus walked away, Beth clutched Emma's hand tighter. He knew exactly where to find us. We're being watched, James confirmed grimly. And now we know why. That night, after Emma was asleep, Beth and James sat in her small living room, speaking in hushed voices. Hartford wants to use Emma in his campaign, James concluded. America's beloved lost daughter's child, reunited with her grandfather. It's a powerful narrative. At what cost? Beth asked. What happens to Emma's stability, her routine, her normal childhood? James looked at her directly. I think we need to seriously consider Vivian's suggestion. Marriage would strengthen our legal position against Hartford, consolidate our parental rights, and resolve your legal troubles. Beth took a deep breath. And after the threat passes, what then? We figure it out, James said simply, one day at a time for Emma's sake. Beth realized with startling clarity that somewhere along this chaotic journey she had come to trust James Richardson, the man she'd once feared and avoided, with the most precious thing in her life, Emma's future. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do it. The autumn rain pattered against the windows of James's penthouse as Beth paced the expansive living room, her wedding ring catching the light with each turn. They had been married for 6 weeks, a small, private ceremony, with only Emma, Miranda, and the attorneys as witnesses. To the outside world, it was a practical arrangement. To Emma, it was a fairy tale come true. To Beth and James, it had become something neither had anticipated, a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared love for their daughter. They're late, Beth noted, checking her watch again. Hospital records take time to access, even with court orders, James reminded her. Daniel will be here. As if summoned by his name, the elevator chimed, and Daniel Reeves stepped into the penthouse, carrying a waterproof messenger bag and looking grave. You found something, James said immediately, recognizing the investigator's expression. Daniel nodded, placing his bag on the glass coffee table and extracting a thick file. It took some doing. Senator Hartford's people tried to block the subpoena, but the judge overruled them. He spread several documents across the table. These are Catherine's complete medical records from Mount Sinai, including toxicology reports that weren't in the original file. Beth sat down, her nursing training kicking in as she scanned the technical documents. This can't be right, she murmured after a moment. What is it? James asked, moving to look over her shoulder. Catherine's blood work showed massive amounts of pitocin, a drug that induces labor contractions, but she was already in active labor when she arrived at the hospital. There would be no medical reason to administer it. Especially not in these quantities. Beth looked up, horrified. This level could cause uterine rupture and severe hemorrhaging, which is exactly what killed her, Daniel confirmed grimly. James's face had gone ashen. Are you saying someone deliberately caused her hemorrhage? Yes, Daniel said, and there's more. The hospital security footage from that night shows Marcus Delaney entering the maternity ward wearing scrubs. He accessed the medication room approximately 20 minutes before Catherine's condition deteriorated. Beth felt the room spinning. I was getting coffee, she whispered. The nurse, Andrea, said Catherine was stable. That I should take a break. When I came back, there were alarms, people rushing in. Andrea Myers, Daniel confirmed, consulting his notes. She left the hospital the next day and now works as Senator Hartford's personal nurse. James sank onto the sofa, his face a mask of controlled fury. Hartford had his own daughter killed? His pregnant daughter? Not killed, Beth corrected, her mind racing to connect the pieces. The plan wasn't to kill her. It was to separate her from the baby, from you. Something went wrong. Hartford never approved of me, James said hollowly. He thought I wasn't good enough for his daughter, that I'd married her for the Hartford connections, the political influence. But to go this far... Beth shook her head in disbelief. Daniel pulled out one final document. This is a copy of Catherine's original will, filed with her family attorney. It states explicitly that if anything happened to her, custody of any children should go to her father, not to James. It's dated 2 months before she disappeared. She never filed that will with our attorney, James said, studying the document. And this signature. It doesn't look right. It's forged, Daniel confirmed. I had a handwriting expert analyze it. Beth stood abruptly. Where's Emma? With Miranda at the museum, James reassured her. They have security with them. We need to get her back here now, Beth insisted. If Hartford realizes we've discovered this... The penthouse elevator chimed again, and all three froze. The doors slid open to reveal Miranda, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. They took her, she gasped. 3 men in suits. They showed museum security some kind of document, said they were with child services. I tried to stop them, but they... She held up her phone, displaying a photo of official-looking papers. They had a court order signed by Judge Reynolds. Reynolds is on Hartford's campaign finance committee, Daniel said quietly. James was already on the phone to his security team, his voice deadly calm, despite the panic in his eyes. Beth stood motionless, a terrible realization washing over her. The marriage, she whispered. It made us a target. Hartford couldn't challenge us separately. But together, with your resources and my legal status as her mother, we became a real threat to his plans for Emma. James ended his call and turned to them, his expression resolute. My team is tracking them. Hartford has a campaign event at the Rosewood Hotel in an hour. He's planning to announce Emma as his long-lost granddaughter, rescued from an unstable environment. Using a 7-year-old child as a political prop, Beth said bitterly, after having her mother killed. He won't get away with it, James vowed, grabbing his coat. Daniel, get these documents to the DA immediately. Miranda, alert our attorneys and have them meet us at the Rosewood. As they rushed to the elevator, Beth caught James's arm. What if we can't stop him? What if he's already told Emma terrible things about us? James took her hand, his grip steady and sure. Emma knows who loves her. She's smart and strong, just like her mother's, both of them. For the first time since meeting James Richardson, Beth saw him not as the wealthy CEO, or as Catherine's controlling husband, or even as Emma's biological father, but as her partner in the truest sense, bound not just by law or circumstance, but by an unbreakable commitment to their child. Let's go get our daughter, she said. The grand ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel buzzed with anticipation as Senator William Hartford stood at the podium, his distinguished white hair and patrician features projecting trustworthiness and authority. Behind him, campaign banners proclaimed, Hartford for America, family first. 7 years ago, the senator intoned solemnly, my beloved daughter Catherine vanished without a trace. Today, I stand before you with both heartbreaking news and a miraculous revelation. In the service corridor behind the ballroom, Beth and James moved swiftly past catering staff, following the hotel's security chief, who had been swayed by a combination of James's reputation and a glimpse of the damning medical records. She's in a room just off the stage, the security chief whispered. 2 of the senator's aides are with her. And Marcus Delaney? James asked tensely. In the ballroom, stage right. Beth's heart pounded as they approached the door marked Green Room. Through the small window, she could see Emma sitting on a velvet sofa, wearing a new dress she didn't recognize, her expression confused and frightened as a woman applied powder to her face. When I give the signal, the security chief murmured, my team will cut the power to the microphones and video feed. You'll have approximately 30 seconds before the backup systems engage. James nodded grimly. That's all we need. Inside the ballroom, Senator Hartford continued his speech. I recently learned that my daughter Catherine gave birth to a child before her disappearance, a beautiful granddaughter who has been kept from her family, her heritage, and her rightful place in the world. Murmurs rippled through the audience of donors and press. Cameras flashed as the senator gestured toward the side of the stage. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to Emma Hartford, Catherine's daughter and my granddaughter. The security chief pressed his radio earpiece. Now, he whispered. Instantly, the ballroom plunged into confusion as the microphones cut out and the large video screens went dark. James and Beth burst through the green room door, startling the aides inside. Emma, Beth cried. Mom! Dad! Emma jumped up from the sofa and ran to them, throwing herself into Beth's arms as James positioned himself between them and the stunned aides. You have no right, one of the aides began, but James cut him off. We have every right, he said coldly. That court order was obtained under false pretenses, and kidnapping charges are being filed as we speak. Beth knelt to Emma's level, quickly checking her over. Are you okay, sweetheart? Did they hurt you? Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. They said you and Dad were bad people who stole me. Were bad. They said my real name is Emma Hartford and I have to live with my grandfather now. That's not true, Beth assured her, wiping away her tears. Your name is Emma Parker Richardson, and your home is with us. The backup power systems engaged, and the senator's voice boomed through the ballroom once more. Technical difficulties. As I was saying, my granddaughter, let's go, James urged, lifting Emma into his arms as they hurried back toward the service corridor. They had almost reached the exit when Marcus Delaney stepped into their path, his hand inside his jacket in an unmistakable threat. The senator is not finished with his announcement, Marcus said coldly. Move aside, Delaney. James commanded, shielding Beth and Emma with his body. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Marcus replied. The senator's influence extends far beyond what you can imagine. Even with your resources, Richardson, you can't win this fight. We already have, Beth said, stepping forward with newfound courage. We know what you did to Catherine. The medical records, the security footage from the hospital, all of it's with the district attorney now. Uncertainty flickered across Marcus's face for the first time. Murder, kidnapping, fraud, James listed grimly. Not even Hartford can make those charges disappear. A commotion from the ballroom suggested the news was already breaking. Phones were ringing throughout the crowd as the first media alerts went out. Breaking, evidence suggests foul play in Catherine Hartford Richardson's death. Marcus's hand emerged from his jacket, empty. His eyes darted toward the nearest exit. Run if you want, James said quietly, but there's nowhere Hartford's money can hide you now. As Marcus backed away and disappeared down the corridor, Beth clutched Emma tightly to her chest, the reality of how close they'd come to losing her forever, washing over her in waves. In the ballroom, chaos had erupted as reporters shouted questions at the visibly shaken senator, whose aides were frantically trying to usher him off the stage. The carefully orchestrated campaign event had transformed into the beginning of his political downfall. James wrapped his arms around Beth and Emma, creating a protective circle around their family. Let's go home, he said simply. As they slipped out through the service entrance, Emma looked up at them with wise eyes beyond her years. "The man with the white hair is my real grandfather? The one who took me?" Beth and James exchanged a look, silently agreeing on honesty. "Biologically, yes," James explained gently. "But family is about love and trust, not just blood. Like how Mom isn't my biological mother, but she's still my real mom," Emma asked. "Exactly like that," Beth confirmed, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. "And you and Dad got married to keep me safe?" Emma continued, piecing together conversations she'd overheard. James smiled, his eyes meeting Beth's over Emma's head. "We got married for many reasons, Emma. Keeping you safe was the most important one." As they stepped into the waiting car, Beth realized something had shifted between her and James, something that had been gradually changing over the past months without either of them fully acknowledging it. What had begun as a practical arrangement for Emma's sake had evolved into something neither of them had expected. A genuine family, bound not just by circumstance, but by choice. Later that night, with Emma finally asleep in her bed at the penthouse, Beth joined James on the balcony overlooking the glittering city. News channels were already reporting Senator Hartford's withdrawal from the presidential race amid allegations of involvement in his daughter's death. "What happens now?" Beth asked, accepting the cup of tea James offered. "Hartford will fight the charges, but with the evidence we have, he won't win," James replied. "Marcus Delaney was apprehended trying to board a private plane. He's already offering to testify against the senator in exchange for leniency." "I meant with us," Beth clarified softly. "Our arrangement." James turned to face her, his expression earnest in the moonlight. "This was never just an arrangement for me, Beth, not really." He hesitated. "I know it didn't start under ideal circumstances, but these past months with you and Emma, they've been the happiest of my life." Beth felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. The same feeling she experienced watching James and Emma build sandcastles or hearing them laugh together over breakfast. "Mine too," she admitted, "against all odds." So perhaps," James suggested tentatively, "we could stop calling it an arrangement and start calling it what it really is." "And what's that?" Beth asked, though she already knew the answer in her heart. James took her hand, his touch no longer that of a business partner or co-parent, but of someone who had walked through fire beside her and emerged on the other side, changed but unbroken. "A family," he said simply. "A real one." As Beth leaned into his embrace, she thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter over coffee to standing united against powerful enemies. 7 years of secrets had finally given way to truth, and in that truth they had found something none of them had been looking for. A second chance at happiness. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, court appearances, media attention, and the ongoing process of healing. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of the storm, Beth allowed herself to believe in the future they were building together, one day at a time. 1 year later, the morning sunlight streamed through the windows of their brownstone home in Brooklyn, illuminating the breakfast table where Emma, now 8, was carefully arranging chocolate chip pancakes on a plate. "Do you think they're perfect enough?" she asked Beth, who was supervising the operation with amused pride. "They're absolutely perfect," Beth assured her, helping Emma add a dollop of whipped cream. "Dad will love them." The past year had brought remarkable changes to all their lives. Senator Hartford had pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony against Marcus Delaney, who was now serving a 20-year sentence for Catherine's death. The scandal had ended Hartford's political career, though his fortune had cushioned his fall. Beth's identity fraud charges had been dismissed given the extraordinary circumstances, and she had legally reclaimed her birth name, Elizabeth Walker Richardson, while maintaining Beth in her daily life. She had also returned to nursing part-time at a pediatric clinic, reclaiming the career she had abandoned when fleeing with Emma. James appeared in the doorway, feigning surprise at the elaborate breakfast display. "What's all this?" "Happy anniversary," Emma exclaimed, rushing to hug him. "1 year since you and Mom got for real married." James and Beth exchanged smiles over Emma's head. 6 months after their practical courthouse wedding, they had held a second ceremony, this time with vows that spoke of love rather than legal strategy, of choice rather than necessity. "The best decision I ever made," James said, meeting Beth's eyes with genuine warmth. Both times. After breakfast, they walked to Emma's school together, a daily ritual they both treasured. Along the way, Emma chatted about her upcoming science project, her words punctuated by animated gestures that reminded Beth so much of Catherine that it sometimes took her breath away. "Mrs. Wilson is coming for dinner tonight, right?" Emma confirmed as they approached the school gates. "Yes, and Miranda and Daniel too," Beth replied. Adjusting Emma's slightly crooked backpack, Mrs. Wilson had become a beloved grandmother figure to Emma, while Miranda and Daniel, now engaged themselves, remained part of their extended family circle. The unlikely bonds forged during crisis had strengthened into lasting connections. "And we're going to the cafe after school?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. James nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." After waving goodbye to Emma, James took Beth's hand as they walked back toward home. "Are you ready for today?" he asked gently. Beth nodded. "It feels right. A way to honor Catherine and close the circle." That afternoon, after collecting Emma from school, they made their way to Baker's Corner, the same cafe where Emma and James had first met, over a borrowed $3. "This is it," Emma announced as they approached the familiar glass door. "This is where our family began." Inside, the cafe had barely changed. The same bell chimed as they entered. The same coffee aroma welcomed them, though the baristas were new. They ordered and sat at a corner table, Emma's legs swinging as she sipped her hot chocolate. "Mum, tell me again about the first time you met Dad," Emma requested, though she'd heard the story countless times. Beth smiled, catching James's eye across the table. "Well, it wasn't actually here. It was at the hospital where I worked with your birth mother, Catherine. Over the past year, they had gradually shared Catherine's story with Emma, carefully explaining her illness, her fears, and ultimately, her love for the daughter she would never know. They had created a memory box with photographs and mementos so Emma could connect with her birth mother in her own way. "But this cafe is where the magic started," Emma insisted, "when I gave Dad my $3. "That's right," James agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "The most important $3 of my life." As they finished their drinks, the cafe door opened, and a harried-looking young woman entered, frantically searching through her purse at the counter. From their table, they could hear her distress. "I'm so sorry. My card must be in my other coat. I really need this coffee for a job interview, and I'm already late." Without hesitation, Emma slid from her chair and approached the counter, reaching up to offer her own allowance money. "I can pay for her coffee, please," she said, echoing the words she had spoken to James a year earlier. Beth and James watched, hands clasped together under the table, as their daughter performed the same act of spontaneous kindness that had changed all their lives. The young woman knelt to Emma's level, overcome with gratitude. "Thank you so much. What's your name?" "Emma Parker Richardson," she answered proudly. "My mom says helping others is more important than anything else." The woman smiled. "Your mum sounds very wise." "She is," Emma confirmed. "Both my mums are." As Emma returned to their table, Beth fought back tears of pride and bittersweet remembrance. In that moment, Catherine's presence felt tangible, her legacy living on through her daughter's generous spirit. Outside the cafe, as they walked home hand in hand, Emma between them, James leaned close to Beth's ear. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if she hadn't offered to pay for my coffee that day? Beth considered this for a moment, watching Emma skip ahead to examine a particularly interesting puddle. I think we would have found each other eventually, she said finally. Some connections are just meant to be, no matter how unlikely they seem. Like a dedicated nurse and a workaholic CEO, James suggested with a smile. Like two people who loved the same child enough to overcome everything else, Beth corrected, squeezing his hand. That evening, as their friends gathered around their dinner table, filled with laughter and conversation, Beth observed the family they had created, not through blood or birth, but through choice and circumstance and love. She thought of the twisting path that had brought them here, a desperate promise to a dying friend, 7 years of secrets and fear, a chance encounter over coffee, and the courage to trust again. Emma tugged at her sleeve, interrupting her reverie. "Mom, can I show everyone my Catherine box for dessert?" "Of course, sweetheart." As Emma ran to retrieve her treasured memory box, James wrapped an arm around Beth's waist. "Happy anniversary," he murmured against her hair. Beth leaned into his embrace, savoring the hard-won peace they had found together. "To unexpected beginnings," she whispered back. And as Emma returned, proudly displaying photographs of the mother she would know only through stories and memories, Beth silently thanked Catherine for her daughter, for her sacrifice, and for the extraordinary journey that had transformed 3 fractured lives into one complete family. The little girl who had once offered $3 to a stranger had unknowingly purchased something priceless, a second chance for all of them.